Awesome. Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you so kindly for joining us. Welcome to Green Apple Books on the Park. I'm Carl Johnson. I'm the event coordinator here at Green Apple, and I have the delight of welcoming Francesca Bell this evening to celebrate her collection, What Small Sound. Let's give a hand to you. Francesca is also joined by Benjamin Gucciardi and Amanda Moore. We can give a hand for them too. Thank you so much. We've been talking about this for a long time. I'm really excited to get to celebrate your collection. Welcome you back, because we got to celebrate Brightstain when it came out as well. So this is an exciting night for us, and I'm happy to have all three of these poets here. Thank you for joining us both in person here and online. Hello, online. We're broadcasting from San Francisco. We are on unceded Ramaytush land. We hope you join Green Apple in our pledge to turn land acknowledgement into land action and donate either your time, monetary means, or whatever to an Indigenous organization every time you hear a land acknowledgement. That's how we roll here. Brief business before we get started this evening. Now is a good time to silence your cell phones if you have not already. Pictures are welcome. I would say please do that, but try to be quiet about it. We have a full calendar of our events on our website, and I would encourage you to check them out because we have some pretty excellent programming, including this evening, but we have some great things coming up as well. Tomorrow we have Matthew Zapruder alongside Bonnie Soy talking about his memoir, Story of a Poem, which is really great. And then on Monday we have a marathon of poetry readings featuring Austin Leah Rose, Amanda Gunn, Mariel Young, and Catherine Pond. And that's just our next two events. We have a whole month ahead of us of fun things for you to attend, so I hope to see you there. Thank you for buying books from tonight's authors. If you have or have not already, we always appreciate it. And if you've been here before, you've definitely heard me say that when you buy books from us, not only do you support us as an independent bookstore, you also support the authors who put so much work into making these books, and then you get to have a book, which might be the best part. So if you're able, we always appreciate it. Thank you so kindly. We're going to hear some readings from each of these three poets joining us this evening, and then we're going to have a brief Q&A if we feel inclined. We are going to see how it goes, but if you have questions for Francesca, I'm sure she would be happy to answer them. I'm going to introduce our first reader. Our first reader, Benjamin Gucciardi, was born and raised in San Francisco. His first book, West Portal, was selected by Gabrielle Calabresi for the Aga Shahid Ali Prize in Poetry and was named a finalist for the Northern California Book Award and the Julie Sugg Award. He is also the author of the chapbooks Timeless Tips for Simple Sabotage, chosen by Elena Pasareo as the winner of the 2020 Quarterly West Chapbook Contest, and I Ask My Sister's Ghost. In addition to writing, he works with newcomer youth in Oakland, California through Soccer Without Borders, an organization he founded in 2006. It might be my favorite part of your bio. Please welcome Benjamin Gucciardi.
Thank you so much, Car, and such an honor to be here with you, Francesca. Thank you so much for having us, and thank you everybody for coming out, especially in light of the big Warriors game that's happening. So yeah, just really appreciate the chance to be here, and Car, just how gracious you are with all the work that you do to make this space possible. So just really appreciate that. I wanted to start with a poem, and then I'll say a couple other things. The Nest. This morning, I watched a goldfinch disappear into a tree through a hole no bigger than my open mouth. From the hollow, the bird began her crooning. That's what poetry is, I thought. Not the tree, but the hidden song. Not the yellow bird, but the instinct to climb inside the darkness to sing. And I wanted to start with that poem because I think when I was reading What Small Sound, I think this idea of the first thing that you notice is just the reckoning with the darkness and the brokenness of our current moment, and just like how clear-eyed you are, Francesca, in that, and how there's also this instinct to sing and to find beauty and to make meaning through poetry. So I just thought, as a little invocation, to start with that poem. And I'll read a few others before I pass it on to Amanda and Francesca. This next poem I'll read is called Type 2, and this is the opening poem from my book, West Portal. Type 2 referring to a type of diabetes. 5 times a day, I prick my finger and ask my blood about its failure. Out of its cage, it wants to discuss its better cages. How, before it was mine, it lived inside a python near Varanasi. The thrill of rushing when muscle snaps a rabbit's spine. How it wants to paint a self-portrait as the Ganges River. In the foreground, a woman in a yellow sari cleanses her son's limp body. His skin, the color of the river. The river, the color of her eyes. That's how holy I am, it says, as I turn the meter off, trash the strip, and choose a new tract to stick the insulin in. The python uncoils from its catch, slinks beneath a rusty harrow. The woman weaves marigolds in her son's wet hair, climbs beside him on the bamboo board. The current ferries them off the canvas stretched over blue tile. Marigolds spill into my hamper, crimson petals on the bathroom floor. Advice for pallbearers. To make the sound of your footsteps disappear requires practice. A cornfield in late autumn when the ground is brittle enough to repeat what it hears. Best if the 6 of you can go together at dusk. Find a barn owl. The corn crow will do. See how close you can get before the bird startles. Observe the interaction of air and wing. Before you handle the casket, borrow your mother's finest crystal vase. Carry it through the crowded parking lot to the water slide. To the water park, ride the slides. Let nothing shatter. The trick is for the coffin to appear to float. The weight of his failures superfluous. Let him be known as a saint for a few moments before he is forgotten. So I'm going to read just 2 more from this book, and then I'll read, one more from this book, and I'll read two new poems. And this one is, in this book, there's a few poems that are written in this form that's kind of these circular poems, and I often will not read them because I wasn't sure how to read them. But I actually thought that something Randall was talking about yesterday, just about repetition and the power of that. Actually, my experience of being at readings is sometimes it can be really nice to have something come back and actually let you sink into it a little bit more. So this poem is called Halo for the Scorched Orchard. In the pause between death and tendril, the farmer kneels where the gage tree grew, knowing she will stay. In the pause between death and tendril, the farmer kneels where the gage tree grew, knowing she will stay. In the pause between death and tendril. So I'll just read a couple new poems and then pass it over. One on a similar subject and one on a different subject. So the first poem is called Rose. Because her thin white coat let the pink of her skin peek through, and the tips of her ears were plush as climbing petals. And because her eyes were red and round as hips, Rose was the only name for the albino rat my mother kept in a small cage in her bedroom. Really, Rose was rarely contained. A pirate with her parrot at the Safeway, Mom steered the cart and Rose's long tail hung down her back like a rig line, loose, flapping. It upset my sister if no one noticed, and when they did, she reveled. Did you see the bald guy? Red as a robin, she cackled on the ride home. Red as rib roast, Mom answered, our bags bulging with tofu and brown rice. My sister didn't know Belgian chocolate gave rats cancer. She loved the brush of whiskers on her fingers when she held the sweet to snout. But Rose grew a tumor on her neck that swelled like a bud in July. They kept vigil, swaddling Rose in a nest of flannel strips and geranium clippings, a candle lit. This is how to let go gently, Mom showed us, and we were lucky to know a grief warm enough to soften, but not so hot as scalds. Still, when my sister died a few years later, my mother was no longer the woman who buried Rose. After the blur of the viewing, the indifferent cremation, thorns grew around her grief. Now, if a rat scurries past on a walk at dusk, instead of the creature, my mom sees my sister's eyes not seeing, her lips not sharing some tender fact. How rats care for the sick and injured in their mischief. How they grieve their dead visibly, each in their own way. And that's true. A group of rats is called a mischief. That's not made up. And it's something wonderful when you're thinking about a poem and it leads you into something, a fact that's far more poetic than you could ever come up with yourself. So I'm just gonna finish with one more poem and pass it over to Amanda and Francesca. This is a poem called Photograph. I grew up here in the Outer Sunset at 46th and Judah, and it was a very different place than it is now. A lot quieter, equally foggy. Photograph. He holds me like a sack of geodes, proud as Gabriel polishing his horn. It is January 1984, 3 days after I was born, and my father has walked me out to the ocean at the edge of San Francisco. The wind in his black hair is the answer to every ink blot. The once blue of his t-shirt is the color I will paint my daughter's room. And the winter light bounding off the sea behind him is the material I will build his casket with when it is that time, when my hands become that tender.
What is that clicking noise?
It's the air conditioning. One more hand for Benjamin Gucciardi. You're a very special poet, Ben. Thank you for sharing. I'm delighted to introduce our next reader. I'm very happy to call her my friend. I'm so glad that she's here with us this evening. Amanda Moore is a poet and essayist whose work has appeared in journals and anthologies, including Best New Poets, Ziziba, and Mamas and Papas on the Sublime and Heartbreaking Art of Parenting, a poetry editor at Women's Voices for Change, and a reader for Vita Review and Bell City Press. She's also doing the great work of being a high school English teacher and lives by the ocean in the Outer Sunset neighborhood of San Francisco with her husband and daughter. She is also the author of the collection Re-Queening. Let's give a hand for Amanda Moore.
Hello. In case you're wondering, the Warriors are up.
Hey, what's the score?
It was 17-7 at the end of Ben's last poem. I'm wondering only a little, but I think you have the better lineup here tonight. No rookies anyway. I just want to start by thanking Car. It is so sweet to be back here. This is where I got to launch my book, and I actually realized I never read the title poem, so I'm going to start with Requeening. How familiar the sight of you in coveralls papery white and gliding between bees safely, large moth, veil twittering behind, like a tattered old wing. How familiar this part of summer, heavy, air ringing each breath from our lungs as we bend over hives that ooze honey, sharp and golden, like afternoon's last rays of sun. As I pump the smoker, you crack the hive, pull out frames to inspect. We're working our way down to the queen, checking brood, how many cells turn with life, and it doesn't take long to see there aren't many. How familiar your voice, how out of place, and I am irritated, like the workers returning with nectar, bright streaks of pollen to find us poking through their ordered world. She was the first queen I spotted on the comb when I learned to tend hives, and now you say we should kill and replace her. I understand. She is not useful, can no longer produce the brood, to become the larva, to become the bee. How many times I've opened your shirt at night, or taken down your pants and dreamed of finding another body, new limbs, someone with softer, darker hair. I am never surprised. Your thumb, her long thorax, the wake of workers stroking, breathing her essence the way I breathe in yours. I know you will crush her before I can argue. There have been times I've wished you dead for the new pureness of the grief I'd feel, but I am overcome with different longings. The hive will come to know the new caged queen. Her scent, alarming at first, will become recognized, comforting. How familiar. Your shoulder beneath my hand, the way you step away from the hive and out of the white suit. Even if it would devour us, I would chew through this cage we keep our love in, to make us new to each other once more. I'm so honored to be here to celebrate this book with Francesca, who's a poet I really admire. And I wanted to read some poems that make me think of you. So one of the things, I'm gonna move this along, that I so admire about Francesca's poetry, and which I am terrible at, is persona poetry. And the way in which she can inhabit all these voices and perspectives. It's amazing just to journey through her book and journey through all these consciousnesses. I have one single persona poem, and it is I'm sorry to only read bee poems from this book. There are non-bee poems in this book, but it's in the voice of a bee. It's called The Worker. Each cell tidy and tight with brood. What's mine now is sunshine and breeze, a gyre of pleasure and labor within. I can carry it all, crumb of flower, spittle and weight, apple tree, blueberry, what they need but don't want, gloved hand or swab. From a crack in concrete, from weed and bombshell, I'll pull nectar and sweet, a surplus stacked neat and ready for plunder. My flight even is beauty and my churr in the air, the way I scatter beam and your attention. But I am tired of being the sting, of closing the door in winter and sifting wing dust and limb out front comes spring. I am vain, in a seething heart of heat, a single platelet pumped through the bright organ. Alone, I canker and peak. I don't want to be vengeance, to see in the world only what I might yet forget to lance. So I circle and comb, tend brood, carry out the dead, lead all our voices to thrum. And the last one I'm going to read just to convince you, are there bees? No, but there are flowers, so kind of like bees. It's also, so Francesca is so sensual in her poetry, and there's so many bodies, and there are nipples and penises and all these like lovely things, and that sensuality is something I really admire in her work. So I'm going to read something I would never normally read if my daughter were in the room. She hates how many birth poems there are in the book. But this is called Calendula. It seems like a good time of year too, those little orange flowers. Calendula. Through weed and tangle, a flower at every portal. Tiny rings of fire, expanding, then folding, each day with the sun. These blooms, their shatter of petals, needles of orange light, nothing you can suture together, like a woman, like me. Small scar, the single stitch I took, though we had anointed the doorway her body would make of me. We had traced it and traced it, not with blossom, but its ointment, which he, nothing else to do during the push, applied to keep me from tearing. Oh well, here in the blazing garden, lazy white moth drift, rooster crow and bluster all day long, I press a single bud in the back of a book to preserve something. Its color, maybe, its watery stalk. I pop some leaves in my mouth to taste the name. Marigold, little calendar, weather glass, clock that ticked those hours and minutes, the seconds and me unfurling. How I worked to open. And inspired by Ben and the fact that we're here to celebrate a new book, I thought I would bring some new poems too. Last night there was an amazing reading here. Randall Mann launched his book deal, which I know is still for sale here. And I was pouring, oh no, you're sold out? Oh, maybe. I thought you said it. No, there are no more because it was packed last night. And I poured over it today and I can't find the line. All your ambitious friends are obsessed with joy?
All my ambitious friends want to talk about is joy. Okay. Oh boy.
Oh boy. So, okay. Oh boy, I'm going to talk a little bit about joy. So count me among your ambitious friends, but also the music of your poems made me dig this one out to just remember that I too sometimes can rhyme. And so looking for joy in places where we normally wouldn't find it. I mop the floor in joy, or try to, knowing someday everyone I love will die. I'm practicing, not for death, but to love the labor of this human life. Who can treasure the broken bone and dish, the house in flame or flood, and what it takes to fix? I take instead notes from smaller sufferings. Once waking in a guest room beside the baby, disappointed to be missing a party in order to make of myself solace I didn't love. That night enough as it unfolded, leaving my husband to small talk, her small body warm with sleep and mine beside it, pile of strangers' coats, their smells and soft bulk, someone else's well-made bed. So I love this mopping, and today, instead, flexion, extension, my able form, clean water, the doing, the being done. When I was sick, when she was young, I would have done anything to live, and live I did. My loss could not have been what I imagined. I imagined we would always be so grateful, alive. I dip the mop, spread oil soap on cracked pine boards. I mop in joy, or try to, in the memory of joy, in service to it. All right, so two more, and then it's you, and I can't wait. This is a poem that Meryl helped me with, so I was going to read it for you. On Desire. Awake in the blue hour, something pleasant just out of reach, the only movement an incandescent flicker, the pulse at his throat. I want to put my mouth on it, to tongue each salty crevice of his neck, but don't. After 20 years of waking here, I just watch the beat lift his tender skin into throb, a proof of life. Why did we marry so young and in June? School was out, the world and us drowning in scent and bloom. We didn't know Vegas, already sweltered as we drove his old Impala toward the desert, the weak AC, our thighs slick on vinyl. We broke down, made love in the back, waiting for the tow. Later, our parents and their spouses met us at the chapel and sweat into their linen shirts and shifts. They didn't have to say a word. We've already outlasted their first tries anyway, and maybe all our hunger, which is why I lie and think about his body but don't touch it, attentive instead to some sporadic buzz, a bug, a web, the skylight, frantic desire deepening the trap. I know what you're thinking, but this is how I want it. All right, and Ben. I had so much fun picking out what I was going to read tonight. So one of the things I love about Ben is we share the water, we share the ocean. And for a while I was writing while I was out there. So I'd go out with an idea and I'd kind of bat it around in the water. And so I have this poem, I think, pretty locked in because that's where I was writing it. It still isn't fully titled, but I think it's called Despite. It's my last poem, and then it's you. Mornings, I try to open like a pupil, wide in the dark, and ready to let the whole world enter me as light. I can love it all, I tell myself. The man who sleeps beside me, beneath his watchful cat. The cat, though she annoys me. Early joggers, dog walkers. The person who will hand my coffee across the counter hours from now, forgetting I don't want room for cream. And maybe even that little jerk who broke my daughter's heart. I hear her crying through the wall and want to go to her as I once did, tears and snot on my shoulder as we rock and sway toward comfort. I move instead in stealth downstairs so she doesn't know I've heard. Even if she wanted to and begged, I wouldn't let her join my morning's dark adventures in the surf. Hard enough to keep track of my friend, and I don't mistake his heart, his life, for mine the way I do with hers. Still, I watch his shadowed form against the waves as he does mine, a pact we've made to minimize our risk. Start together, yet as we cleave, separate. Like that Thursday when, pulled out by Rip, I didn't think I'd make it back to shore. Held down, held under, candled by wave and almost snuffed. I didn't know until I saw him see me, I'd be safe. Then the ocean gave me back my breath, which I drew in, more deeper, more beloved than before. This is what I want to take, like an unblemished sand dollar, home to my daughter, where she sits in her pain as in a too hot bath. We know water doesn't hold its heat for long, but that doesn't keep the first touch from burning. I know today can't sustain this dawn light, the pink and orange of it, the blue-black roiling, but it doesn't keep me from watching, from letting all its light in. Thank you so much.
Hand for Amanda Moore. So what's the pleasure, Amanda Moore? I'm delighted to introduce our next poet. Who's the reason for the season, the reason that we're together this evening. Francesca Bell is a poet and translator. Her debut collection, Bright Stain, was a finalist for the Washington State Book Award and the Joy Silk Award. Her work appears widely in literary journals, and she has received a Neil Postman Award for Metaphor from Rattle and an honorable mention in Nimrod's Pablo Neruda Poetry Prize. Bell grew up in Washington and Idaho and did not complete middle school, high school, or college, so take that. She lives with her family in Novato, California, and her collection, What Small Sound, is the reason we are here tonight. Please welcome Francesca Bell.
Oh, thank you. Thank everyone for coming, and thank those people who are watching online. I know you're sneaking peeks at the Warriors game. And good luck to the Warriors.
They're still winning.
They're still winning. Of course they are. We're holding them aloft with our poetry. And thank you to Carr and to Green Apple Books for hosting us. And thank you to Ben and Amanda for reading with me. And their poetry is some of the poetry that really keeps me being a poet. So tonight I decided to do a themed reading. I don't always do that, but Mother's Day is this weekend, and Amanda's work often does center around parenting, and Ben happens to be a new parent of a 9-month-old baby. So I'm going to read all poems about either having a mother or being a mother. Becoming. Once I was a whole person. I agreed to be transformed through trauma into pieces. I laid myself cheerfully down before the apocalypse. After, the doctor placed the baby among my body's wreckage. I learned to call this love. So something that people don't really tell you about before you become a parent is how much suffering you're going to witness. Large suffering, small suffering, and it all feels large. Sorrow is innate in the human. How new the child is. Her cheeks with the look of crisp apples, but so soft they seem to melt to my touch. How little she has known in her 4-week life. How short her hunger tethered to my breast, pain limited to inoculation's needle jab, and even that faced with the nipple firm in her mouth. Yet she knew enough from the first to wake crying, and for a terrible moment inconsolable. So long her journey from my dreams to my body to my arms. So human, the burden of grief she brought with her. And that poem is for my Amanda. And Cheryl's here, and she was there when my Amanda was born. She was going to nursing school, and she got to come and watch. I'm not sure why she had children after that. Giving birth is really... You're creating a person that you're going to love more than anyone else, and then you are setting them loose into a world of peril, and no one tells you that either. Lightning coming closer all the time. I can't tell from here if the Lord is a sniper or a drunk guy with a shotgun, whether he's poised with his scalpel and scrubs or just reaching into his pickup for a hacksaw. I see my neighbor raising a girl my daughter's age check into the hospital for kidney stones and come home with stage 4 lymphoma. A friend's husband, 20 years her senior, like mine, falls to a heart attack with a one-way ticket to a nursing home clutched in its fist. And the boy from my son's school lies in a coma after taking a baseball at 100 miles per hour to the head, his skull fractured in precisely the place my son was twice concussed. Sometimes I want to take my fist to the face of God or duck my head, but I keep still out here in the open, humanity hung on me like a metal suit, and dread dripping off me like rain. The other theme of this is probably birth control for those of you who haven't yet had children. Sorry. Another possibility is long-term illness, which is something that has befallen our family. And this is a poem about that. Empty. Those broken winter midnights, the baby's wailing having woken me, her stutter-stopping cries made a song we rocked to, nursing. She was always sick then, her ears tiny drum bursting bloody on the pillow, her breath ragged as a ripped seam against my areola. She labored all night, like a woman who tries to bring the terrible miracle forth. My breasts are grown useless now, but still I haul them around as I carried that girl on my hip well past when she could walk, a weight that shifted my bones out of place. These nights, spine still off kilter, my body does not settle. Her mind now is murky, my grown girl, like sediment stirred up. I hear her in the dark, hurling objects into her piled high pillows, crying. And I lie, oh, I lie, with nothing left to offer her. So a few years ago, I went to the dentist. I go to the dentist every 6 months, and suddenly, a few years ago, the dentist told me I had a dead tooth in my mouth. And you'd think someone would have noticed this earlier, because it's a process of dying. But, you know, as a poet, if you get a poem out of it, then it's all been worthwhile. The dentist says it's from some earlier damage. Inside my head, a dead tooth is lodged among the living, as I am lodged in this life. How can I tell one thing from another? How can I explain I feel like the tooth feels now that it doesn't? Dead or alive, it gleams in every picture, only faintly discolored. And I appear smiling in every moment at the center of the family, while I house some real thing in a state of slow decay. The pulp in my tooth has nearly calcified, as I have nearly hardened before the stove, fixed, fastened, a dead thing no one realized was dying. I carry this tooth in my mouth like a sentence I cannot speak. So I'm going to close with a few poems having to do with having a mother. And my mother died just 2 months ago, and so these are for her. I dedicated the book to her, and she sadly didn't ever read it, because I tried to give it to her when I had my copies, and she said she wanted to order a copy. So this is for my mother. 2 stories. In the dream, mother, we live in 2 stories near a field parched white. And you know the field will come alive with fire, and fire will flicker to our house and consume it completely. Yet you say I may not go up the stairs and bring out my boxes of poems or carry my cat with gold eyes from the treacherous rooms. You refuse to help me carry my books or pictures of me at every age, or the painting of the red-haired girl praying. I run fast as I can to each house, begging for someone to help me save what I have saved of the years of my life, but no one moves fast enough. So I come to stand with you, mother, and watch as our house lights up, a blaze dancing through every room. I must stand there, knowing each green plant I have watered folds in on itself, and my face in the photograph of my 4th birthday blisters and weeps down the page. I must listen and clearly hear my own voice, my poems hissing in the flames. It's pretty funny, I messed up the poem where I said I have to clearly hear my own voice. It's still a little hard for me to read the poems about my mom. I mean, it's still a fresh loss. Something I learned from my mom was how to cook and how to chop and clean up the kitchen. And this is a poem about really what's passed from mother to daughter, disguised as a poem about cooking. Rhubarb. 1. Sometimes cooking is like being with you. Uncovering each layer, onions knife my eyes. I was a girl watching you in the kitchen. You taught me to peel back the delicate skin, to make the pieces small. Cooking, it's okay to cry when life bubbles beneath your masked face, bitter as rhubarb stewing on the stove. Even sugar doesn't erase the taste passed from your mouth to mine. 2. Peeling peaches, I remember your slight weight against the edge of sink and think if you had moved, the house would have fallen around us. My own sink is cool now, hard against the hollow my hips make. Peach skins gash its white surface. Divided, bare, the fruit smells like you. I see the darkness of each half bleeding out from the center. And I'm going to close with one last poem for my mom. And so nothing in my experience ever taught me how much my parents had done for me other than having kids of my own. All of a sudden you think, holy shit. I mean, somebody did all of this for me and made all of these giant sacrifices. And so the title of this poem is from that wonderful Robert Hayden poem, Those Winter Sundays. And he ends the poem with, what did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? What did I know? By 14, I had lost all patience with her careful makeup, the fact that she ate cattle and swine and poultry, and said when asked that she would gladly kill anyone who tried to hurt me. She shaved her legs and had not read the diaries of Aeneas Nin, or Johnny Got His Gun, or the Ballad of the Lonely Masturbator. Failings I ticked off silently in the car beside her those afternoons she drove me to the orthodontist she could not afford, so he could close the gaps in my mouth, coax my eye teeth from their Count Dracula positions, and give me finally the smile that would oil the hinges on so many of the world's doors. She cleaned up after construction workers to pay for it, paint thinner stripping her skin raw when she used it to clean spatters from the windows. For 2 years, my mouth ate up what might have gone for her to have new shoes or her own dentist. When her tooth abscessed, she waited it out, swollen and hunched in our kitchen, a woman pummeled by her love. Thank you. Am I supposed to stay here and wait? I'm waiting for questions. The only thing I would say is my husband can attest to this. You should never ask me anything that you don't really want me to answer. If you're not sure you want to know what I think, don't ask.
Amen.
Yes.
Listening to your poems, just the music of it is interesting. You hear a lot of alliteration and assonance. And so can you talk about sort of like the sonic architecture of your poems?
Yeah, it's funny. When I was young, I wrote all in rhymes, and so I think, and I had a long Edna St. Vincent Millay phase, and
we've all been there.
Yeah, I still love her. I think she's now become sort of underrated. She's a fantastic poet and an amazing person, and she would have loved the gender bending of the day. But I think that I have a natural tendency to do that and an ear for it. And then I think something that also probably accentuates that is that when I'm writing, I say everything over and over out loud, even as I'm in the midst of trying to write something. And then when I'm revising, I used to record myself, but I lost patience with that. So now I just read things over and over again. And for me, maybe because my mother, she had hearing loss, and I have hearing loss. I think sound is very important. I think that could be part of it too. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
So I wonder how it is for you. You lost your mother so recently, and then you're promoting this book. Is that you go back and forth between those emotions? How do you deal with that?
I don't know. We could ask my husband that. Probably, I'm not dealing with it very well. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I'm still very much in grief, and my father had a stroke, a week and a half ago. I've lost 3 dogs, 2 since February. Yeah, no, I don't know. It's been weird. It's just weird. And for some reason, I'm able to read the poems. I had to read a poem for my mom. Recently, I was named the Marin Poet Laureate, the Marin County Poet Laureate, and they asked me to read this poem, this specific poem, and it's for my mom. And I did choke up, but I think that was less than a week, maybe a week after she died. Yeah, I don't know. It's been odd. Yeah, I don't know how to say how it's been. Yeah, hard. But Ben and I were just talking about this, that there's a strange expansiveness about grief that I hadn't expected. I don't know if you found that with grieving your sister. Yeah, it's odd. I thought that the rooms would all feel much smaller, but the room of my life feels bigger, like it's stretching painfully. Yeah. Yes.
I'm interested, one of the things that you and I have in common is that we didn't publish our first books early. We had a whole life before we published our books, and then the second one comes so quickly after the first one. Maybe it doesn't feel that way, but what was different for you with the second book from a first book? My first book was published, I think I was quite a bit later than you. I was 52. I'm 56 now. And those poems were written over many, many years. And I mean, the poem in here, 2 Stories, that I read tonight, I wrote when I was, I think, 21. So I've been sort of collecting poems for a long, long time. And I'm not a person, I don't sit down and write a book, a book of poems, a collection. I don't think of a theme and then write to it. I just kind of accrue poetry, like fat. and crows, what are those, crow's feet? So this doesn't feel that different from the first book, except this is post-pandemic, and so it feels harder to promote. Yeah, some of the places that were big supporters of mine, where I gave readings, are not any longer in existence, and I had a very hard time during the pandemic, and I've been mostly off social media because I found it too upsetting to be on social media, especially around the election, all the vitriol and the hate from both sides. And so it feels a little different in that way. But for me, the process of writing is always to be, I'm just a tortoise, just very slow accumulation of work. And so I had all of these poems, not all of them, I had many of them already written at the time the last book came out, probably. Many of them. My 3rd book is probably 2/3 of the way written now. But it's just because it's very slow for me. It's gradual. Yeah. I guess we all have our weird process.
Pride Stain was just a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
It was 4 years ago.
4 years ago. Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I went on a huge bunch of readings. I gave about 50 readings from maybe starting in March until November. And then I thought, oh great, got the holidays, and then January was the beginning of the pandemic. Yeah. Well, I mean, I knew it was coming. I was early. I shopped early and everything. Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, I know.
I was just telling her, they always exaggerate this stuff.
And I was at Costco with the big cart.
You're the one that got the toilet paper.
I did. People were coming to me for toilet paper. Yeah, so if there's another pandemic, I'm your girl. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all so much, and thanks again, Car. I'm sorry, Ben has a question.
I wanted to ask you about the title. The title resonates with me a lot. It feels like it goes a lot of different places, and I just wondered if you could talk about what it means to you. And
well, so the title is it's the title to a poem in the book that's about sitting in the audiologist booth. When you have hearing loss, I started losing hearing when I was about 24. And I just dread going to the audiologist booth. I think it feels like you're failing. Meryl's nodding. It's just like, you sit there and tones must be happening. And they tell you, go ahead and push the button if you think there might be a tone. So then you think, oh my God, I'm insane. and so it is literally, it's taken from that poem. And for me, a lot of the themes in this book have to do with sound. There's music and hearing loss. And then also I like it. No one else in the world will probably ever notice this, but there's a poem in my first book called "For My First Ex-Lover to Die," and it ends with him making a small sad sound, and while he's in my body, and so I liked that this title called back to my first book in a way that nobody would know but me, and now all of you know, and YouTube knows, Yeah, and then I love also the idea, there was a lot of grief in this book, and so I like the idea of the small sound of grief, and there's so many children in this book, so yeah, I don't know, when I came upon it, I usually make a big list, I don't know what you guys do, but I go through and try to look if there are any bits and pieces of poems that could be titles. And this was just it, almost from the very beginning. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you all. And thanks for welcoming my vision in the world. This is the first official reading.
One more hand for Francesca Bell. And I'll just say, Francesca, thank you for letting us celebrate with you. And whenever I've corresponded with you via email, you always say, hello, dear poet, or hi, poet. And it's like a small communion that we get to have, and I feel very seen, and I always appreciate it. And so thank you for letting me into that. And I'm so glad we get to celebrate you tonight. We have copies of Francesca's book available. We also have Amanda and Ben's available at the front register. You can find them there. And will you be willing to sign copies of your book?
Absolutely.
Great. You never know. I really.
This is all you people are getting from us.
Good night. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you, online audience. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.